quite possibly the most underrated British artist of the 21st century, the incredible Rosalie Cunningham has returned. Following up from her acclaimed sophomore album of Two-Piece Puzzle, has she got enough surprises left in her bag of tricks, or is this an album that should have been shot another decade, let alone another day? Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, my name is Ian, this is Rhyme Signatures, and we are once again opening the lid on the best new releases in prog rock and metal.
Tubes tight, not the way that I planned it. Heaven knows how I've landed.
Okay, back in the early days of Rhyme Signatures, I reviewed Cunningham's aforementioned sophomore album of Two-Piece Puzzle, and I have one major regret from that video. I barely talked about it. Seriously, that video was only like 5 minutes and 39 seconds long, and it really felt like I hardly spoke about the record at all. It's kind of embarrassing to watch it back, but it does remind me of where I've come from on this channel, how far I've travelled since then, etc, blah de blah, and how much more prepared I now feel to tackle doing a proper review of one of the most exciting, creative and up-and-coming artists on the UK psychedelic retro-progressive rock scene. Now, while that might feel like a bit of a mouthful of a genre label, I think it's about as succinct a description of Cunningham's style as can be. She's equal parts Kate Bush, David Bowie, Elton John, and yet somehow manages to sound exactly like herself and herself alone. She's managed to capture the spirit of the late 60s and early 70s, distill it into its component parts, and craft a melange of the best parts of the era while giving out what can only be described as one of the most unique sounds in modern prog. Now, I can't help but feel that in 40 years' time there's gonna be a whole slew of artists whom reviewers much like myself will be talking about how they sound just like Rosalie Cunningham. This is an artist and an album that I feel is impossible to ignore, and has easily hoisted itself into the upper echelons of my year-end list. So, come join me whilst we take a moment or two and I'm going to talk about why I feel To Shoot Another Day is worth the time investment. So, chances are the first thing you'll notice about this record is just how confident it all sounds. From the first bars of the title track, there is an instant sense of gratification. The whole experience of this opening number has the immediate feel of a lost James Bond song from the late 1960s. Cunningham wastes very little time in demonstrating her absolutely spectacular vocals. It has swagger, but also a delicate introspection, and a remarkable power as well, which is something that will make itself known frequently over the album's runtime. The feel of a late 60s to mid 70s Hollywood vibe is explored over a lot of the album, with the majority of the songs on offer here having a certain cinematic quality to them. Be that through the layered and interesting instrumentation, or from the bombast and theatricality of Rosalie's vocal delivery. Almost every single song on To Shoot Another Day carries itself with a kind of fascinating independence, whilst also feeling tightly stitched together into an altogether remarkable canvas of interconnected songs. The sheer number of catchy hooks and addictive choruses here should be illegal, as it frankly feels unfair to everyone else in the room, with Rosalie clearly hoarding the lion's share of catchiness this year. Tracks like Timothy Martin's Conditioning School, Good to be Damned, In the Shade of the Shadows, The Premiere, Return of the Ellington, and closing track Home will stay in your head for weeks to come. But I think what I appreciate about Cunningham's songwriting here is that these songs aren't just built around a single hook. There's some seriously impressive instrumental chops on display here too. Now, she's credited with guitars, bass, keyboards and percussion, with everything else being handled by a smattering of guest appearances. Most notable of whom is the fantastic Raphael Moura on drums and David Woodcock on piano. Let's just take the opening of third track Heavy Pencil, for example, with its distorted, groovy bass lines, drum fills right out of the Moody Blues catalogue, and woodwind instrumentation that weirdly brings up memories of classic British sitcoms to me. It is a spectacular tapestry of talent on display, with the majority of everything you're hearing being performed by Cunningham herself. Heavy Pencil is easily the proggiest song on the album, and the one that follows the least standard song structuring, which of course makes it one of my standout favourites, and an easy recommendation for a starting point if you're still not sure about all of this. But I'll be honest with you all, the true standout tracks for me are those where Rosalie has crafted some of the most infectious earworms of the year. Now, I've mentioned a lot of these earlier in the review, but I just want to touch briefly on a couple of favourites. Good to Be Damned, alongside the later track of Spook Racket, feel destined to become favourites in Rhyme Signatures HQ around Halloween time. I can't help but imagine these songs being performed in like a vampire nightclub or something like out of What We Do in the Shadows, you know? The chorus to Good to Be Damned is absolutely delightful, with a huge swagger and sway to it, pulsing with a kind of sexy attitude that I've not heard any other artist this year achieve to this level. There's a sense of mystery and intrigue to the performance, like Cunningham is belting out an irresistible siren song. And it's followed up immediately by In the Shade of the Shadows, which slows things down to a crawl, pushing forward a kind of burlesque jazz nightclub vibe, with Cunningham's vocals once again earning their centre square status amidst the flirtatious piano, brash and confident brass work, and once again another chorus destined to get firmly lodged in your head for a very long time. I'm also a particularly big fan of the last 3-hit combo on the album of The Premiere, Return of the Ellington, and Home. The first of which has a certain climactic quality to it, almost feeling like the build-up to a Wild West showdown in places, and certainly earns a place in my heart for name-dropping Donald Duck in its lyrics. Anyone who's familiar with Rosalie's sophomore album of Two-Piece Puzzle will certainly get a kick out of Return of the Ellington, as it skirts around familiar melodies to songs like Donovan Ellington and Donny Part 2 from that album, without ever explicitly reprising them. It reminds me in places, a lot of the band focus, as the guitar tone is remarkably similar to the song Hocus Pocus, which helps to reinforce the retro stylings of the album's overall sound. And then there's the finale of the album, Home. It's about as charming as it can possibly get. It's got this kind of, dreamlike wandering quality to it. You can practically imagine sleepwalking home from an intense night out to this song. Rosalie continues here with her absolutely gorgeous vocal delivery to make for a song that is captivating in its simplicity and serves as a beautiful, haunting wind down, almost as if the song is tucking you into bed after a long and difficult day. In truth, it's an almost perfect end to a nearly perfect album, but there's a couple of teeny tiny nitpicks that I have with it that hold it back from achieving the perfect 10 status. So yeah, I don't have too much to complain about here, I'll be real with you. The points I'm going to make are more about me trying to look at this album from all possible angles rather than anything I particularly have against the record. Now, when drawn up against Two-Piece Puzzle, To Shoot Another Day definitely feels more like an evolution of her sound rather than a revolution. This is very much a record cut from the same cloth, so if you didn't appreciate what came before, there's unlikely to be anything here that will convert you to Club Cunningham. It's got that same retro vibe, that sort of lo-fi production and deliberately old-school mixing that you may or may not love. Now, if you're coming to this record looking for a clean, pristine-sounding experience, you may want to look elsewhere, as Rosalie's worship of the 60s and 70s extends to not only the compositions and stylistic expressions on the album, but also to the sound and overall feel of it too. Now, for some people, this will come across as warm and vintage sounding, capturing that essence of the Summer of Love, but to other people it may sound, a bit old-fashioned and maybe a bit out of time. Now, I personally fall into the former camp, but I can absolutely understand why this may not appeal to everyone. Also, not every song on the album feels as equal as each other. I found myself largely glossing over songs like Stepped Out of Time and The Smut Peddler, the former feeling honestly largely unmemorable and the latter feeling too interstitial, without enough time to fully flesh out the admittedly excellent guitar work to be found on it. But let's be real, when only 2 songs on a 12-track album are hitting at a 6 or a 7, with the rest of the album being 9 or 10-star rated bangers, then honestly, I think you're doing pretty well, all things considered.
I had an idea, it was crisp and it was clear, but it was built.
So, what else can I possibly say about Rosalie Cunningham's To Shoot Another Day? I've been waiting eagerly for a follow-up to 2-piece puzzle, and I have not been disappointed in that respect. I know that I said this isn't exactly breaking any new ground for Cunningham, but when that ground is as enjoyable as this, then honestly I don't think she needs to be reinventing the wheel every time she puts a new record out. What Rosalie has made quite clear with her discography so far is that she has a masterful grip on melody, hooks, and respect for the past, as well as having one of the strongest, most haunting vocal deliveries of any recording artist right now. I'm very excited as I will be getting to go and see her live later this month with my partner in my hometown, which I am obviously champing at the bit about, and I can't wait to see how well these songs translate to a live setting as I inevitably fall more and more in love with them than I already am. This is an easy recommendation for a physical purchase. I've got my vinyl coming on the way via Royal Mail, and I would urge you all to support this truly extraordinary artist in whatever way you can. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you love this one, if you hated this one, please talk to me about your experiences with the album in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you liked the video, please do tell your friends about little old me, and please do consider throwing the channel a subscription if you've been enjoying my content so far. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.